Okay. Alright, everyone. So we have another game that was sent in to us. Okay. And so we're going to take a look at it and see how we can help this player to improve. Okay, so this player was rated about 1,000. Okay, so let's see what we can do to help him get better. Alright, and I believe he said this was from a Blitz game. So only a few minutes for each side. I think he said it was 5. Yeah, so 5 minutes? Okay. Let's go ahead and let's start taking a look at this. Alright. And he was playing as the white pieces, by the way. That's important to know. It's important to know what side was playing which. So that's useful. Okay. So let's take a look. Okay. E4, E6, we got French defense. I like black's choice, French defense. That's my favorite. Okay, D4, D5. Okay, so far these first two moves, Fury. E5 advanced French. Alright. Okay, and knight to E7. So this move, probably not so great because you can immediately break with C5. That's the point of the French usually, is that you can immediately play C5 and start to hit at the white pawn chain and start to try to put tension on these center pawns. And so that's kind of a major move in the French. Okay, so knight E7 doesn't really work for that because it also blocks in the bishop from getting out. And in some cases, knight E7 can work before getting out the bishop, but right here, you should just go ahead and play C5 and just immediately hit on the center. And don't worry about developing out this knight to anywhere early on. Okay. A4, not exactly sure what A4 really intends, because usually in the opening you want to be developing your pieces and controlling the center, right? Like knight F3 or bishop D3 would be good, because just getting out the pieces to control the center, castle, all that stuff. Knight F5, so again, probably still C5 even though now the pawn, we're gonna defend it. These pawns would be weak on E5 and C5, so I think C5 would still be good. Knight F5, and here we have G4. So in some cases in the French, sometimes you can play G4, but I think it's a little early because there's no pieces developed, and it can lead to some weak king issues. So maybe just knight F3 developing would be something I would consider. Okay, knight back to E7. Bishop G5. And knight B to C6 here. Knight B to C6 by black, probably not so great. Because again, in the French, you want to play C5. You want to hit the center. That's a must in the French defense. Absolute must, C5. Knight B to C6 makes that hard to achieve, because now your knight is in front of your c-pawn. Okay, B4. I'm not quite certain, because I think that the knight can take the pawn. So I'm not quite sure what B4 is doing. Maybe he wants to play B5, but I think the knight can take. And I don't think the open file. I don't think the open file really helps. So in some cases you can sacrifice pawns and maybe tie bishops down to defense, but I think in this case black's fine with taking. Okay, C3. Wait, no. B5. I would think C3. I would think C3. Just hold these pawns, but okay, B5. Because yeah, after taking, you get the pin on the pawn, so the pawn can't take back. You have to take back with the bishop. And then this pawn looks like it's a little isolated here on the side. So I don't like isolated pawns. So unless there's some other benefit that is present on the board, most of the time I prefer not to have isolated pawns. In some openings, isolated pawns are fine. Sometimes it's perfectly okay. In this case, I don't like accepting them unless it's necessary or I get some other benefit. Like in the in the Gyoko piano, a lot of times you get an isolated pawn, but you get a lot of piece activity. In this case, I don't know if you get. I don't really think you get anything in return for the isolated pawn, though. Okay, bishop d7. Okay, breaking the pin. Knight c3. Okay, f6. Okay, that's a blunder. Just giving away a pawn because takes, bishop takes, and then down a pawn. Okay, rook g8, h3. I don't know if h3 is necessary as well because you got the queen defending the pawn, and so I don't know if that's necessary right here. Maybe. I don't like making unnecessary pawn moves, I guess, and because you still got pieces to develop, king safety to worry about. You got to think about where the king is going. And if you push all the pawns in front of the king, you make pawn moves instead of thinking about king safety. Sometimes things can go wrong. Okay, bishop g7, rook g7, or rook takes on g7. Okay, and f4. Okay, yeah, back to pushing the pawns. See, I don't know if f4 is necessary either because, again, pushing pawns when you have a few pieces left. And also, after f4, where is the king really going to find any safety? I mean, already the king was less safe because these pawns had been pushed. But now the king's got all this open space around him. And that doesn't look very safe. Get rook f7. Knight g2. And yeah, I mean, I guess at that point it's probably safer to keep the king in the center because black has open lines on the queen side, so I don't think castling it would be safe anymore. I don't think castling queen side will be very safe either because there's maybe this rook has a semi-open file, and there's some open space over here. At least the center's partially closed. So that kind of eliminates some of the danger. Some of the dangers that could happen. I mean, but I guess you could also say that you are up a little bit of material. So, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 against 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you do have a pawn. So I guess, so even though there's some present dangers, so even though there's some danger, I guess you can say that you have the extra pawn. Okay, and castling. Okay, and then, yeah, so b6. I don't know how I feel about that because then there's this pin and you can't move this knight. But I guess you can play this. I don't know, I think the bishop was fine here. I would think like bishop on d7 and then maybe try to get rid of the bishop because this bishop's quite the bad piece in the French defense in most cases. Alright, b6, king g2, rook to g7. Okay, and king g3. Yeah, so this king isn't very safe, as you can see. These open files are starting to show some dangers, although still better for white. There is, some potential dangers which need to be avoided. And, I'd say knight to g3, and now you stop any h5 ideas. The knight's on g3, there's no h5. King g3, and the next move, h5. Okay. g5. Okay, is there anything better than g5? Because I don't think you want to let him take. So I think that closing the file probably is best. Probably best. Yeah. of course, now the knight could come to f5, and this would be a great outpost for the knight. If black didn't play knight to g6, knight f5 would have been very good. g6, not as good as knight on f5, because this knight on f5 is kind of reaching a bit into the white position. I mean, it's attacking this pawn a second time, putting the king in check, and it's a little bit more advanced here on f5, so a little bit more useful than on g6. But g6 was played, knight to g6. h4. Yeah, because if he... Yeah, the other thing about this is, yeah, since this was a blitz game, maybe you didn't realize this. So, I mean, I make mistakes like this as well in blitz. But, there is one other thing that happened with happens if knight to g6 has played the game. You know, knight f5, more useful, definitely, and like as mentioned, putting the king in check, which is a very big factor. Because if you make knight to f5, you keep the check, which means white doesn't get a free move. Or doesn't get to play a next move, he has to move his king. However, with knight to g6, less useful. There's also another downside that maybe you noticed. This knight is hanging. Knight to g6, yeah. Not as good because you are as well hanging a piece. And so that's why, and so h4, not so great. As a hanging. But I mean, this is blitz, so keep in mind. I mean I've done things like that in blitz too, so I mean it happens to everyone. Don't say that doesn't happen to you. If you said that happened to you and you never left a piece hanging or never missed a hanging piece that your opponent left undefended, you're lying, because that happens to everyone. I would never believe someone telling me they never leave a piece hanging or never forget to take a capture or make a capture of the hanging piece. That happens to everyone. Okay. Knight g1, knight f7, knight f3. And bishop to d7. And now this knight is no longer hanging. So took a couple moves. But yeah. Now, yeah, so I don't, yeah. So yeah, that's one thing that you will need to work on. That, noticing hanging pieces. But anyways, that kind of stuff happens from time to time, especially in blitz. Alright. Go ahead, let's get through this here. Alright. Okay. Taking with a knight. Okay, and you have to be careful here in this type of position, because there are potential threats of knight taking on g5. Like you can't take with the pawn, because if the pawn takes, and rook takes, queen takes, and knight takes on g5, and suddenly this queen is kind of far away to really add some defense over here. So black is down material, but all of his material is around the white king. So, yeah, and yeah, so like say takes. So black is down material. Queen to g5, and this does not look very pleasant. Yeah, I think there's a number of checkmates that can happen. For example, there's a nice mate in 1 if the king moves to the h-file. And there's a couple others in here. Won't go through all of them, but anyways, knight takes on b5. Let's go back to the regular game, the real game that happened. But yeah, so you have to be a little bit careful now, because these pawns have been pushed a little bit too far. Okay, knight takes on g5. Okay. H takes. And queen takes on g5. And yeah, now things aren't looking so pleasant. As pleasant as they did a minute ago. So in the game, king h2, and then queen to h4 checkmate. And there's a couple other checkmates, like again, there's queen g2. So to avoid the checkmate, you just can't go to the H file. There's a couple options, and pretty much the best that white can do now is a repetition. So I had worked out a variation, see if I can remember it. Okay, so if king f2 or f3, they both pretty much wind up the same place, as I remember. Okay, queen f5, and okay, king e2 leads to a checkmate, so you have to play king e3. So if king e2, then rook g2, and if king e1, queen e4, only legal move, and then checkmate. So that's the one option. And if rook g2, king e3, queen e4 is checkmate. And then rook f2, queen takes, king d3, rook g3, and then checkmate. Okay. So now that you know that, so let's go back. After rook g2, we now know that, oh no, after king e2, we know king e2 doesn't work. There's no avoiding a mate. You can go king e3, at which point there's a perpetual check that black can get, and he has to keep the perpetual going. So that rook f3, is it queen g5? Let's see here. Yeah, queen g5, and then maybe king d3, queen f5 because the rook is pinned, and then king e3, and then it's probably best for both to just copy at this point. Just keep doing the same moves and then a repetition. Okay, so this would be a better way to have ended the game. You know, you gotta avoid those checkmates, obviously. Okay, and so let's see. So some things to work on. Let's see. So obviously, definitely keep in mind for hanging pieces. Because if your opponent leaves a piece hanging and you take it, then you'll be up material, and then you can win. The other thing is, be careful about pushing the pawns in front of your king, like the early g4. That may have been part of why the king became exposed, because these pawns got pushed too far too early. Yeah, and so maybe less pawn moves, more piece movement, and more center control. Like, you know, less pawn moves, more pieces. Alright, okay, so I think that'll do it for this video. Okay, thanks for sending in this game. And yeah, send me more games, everyone. Alright, bye.